Welcome to the Daily News Roundup. It's Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. We have a lot to cover today, from fentanyl to hostages to rainforest destruction and even a mafia hit.
It's a busy news day. Let's jump right in.
All right, so first up, the fentanyl crisis and the impact it's having on U.S.-Mexico relations. The BBC actually got some pretty rare access to a cartel safe house down in Mexico. They got to see firsthand a fentanyl shipment being prepared.
Yeah, they actually saw the drugs hidden in a car's gas tank. It's a common tactic used to get it across the border. And the BBC also spoke to this LA-based fentanyl dealer, they called him Jay, who said he moves something like 100,000 pills every week.
100,000 pills, wow. And that's despite all the efforts from the U.S. to try and stop this trade. We've got President Trump imposing a 25% tariff on all Mexican goods to pressure Mexico into cracking down. He's even threatened to wage war on the cartels. But this dealer, Jay, he told the BBC he doesn't think it's going to do much. He says the demand in the U.S. is just too high.
And that demand has led to a very real human cost. Overdoses from fentanyl, it's tragic, but they're now higher than deaths from car accidents and even gun violence combined in the U.S.
It's a really grim picture. But there is some positive news. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum, she is taking a tough stance against the cartels. She sent 10,000 National Guard troops to the border, and we're seeing a record number of fentanyl seizures because of it.
Mexico's also extradited 29 high-level cartel figures to the U.S. to stand trial. So some movement there, but, we have to remember some experts argue that simply targeting the supply won't solve the problem.
Yeah, because the demand for fentanyl here in the U.S. is still a huge issue. And that means we need to take a hard look at the way painkillers are prescribed here. That's fueled the opioid crisis.
It's a complex issue, for sure. Multifaceted, demands a big solution. Now, switching gears completely, let's talk about this terrifying hostage situation in Pakistan.
Right. A passenger train was hijacked by the BLA. That's the Balochistan Liberation Army. Hundreds of people were taken hostage.
A very harrowing ordeal for those passengers. Caught in the crossfire, gunfire, explosions reported.
And the Pakistani army, they launched this rescue operation. But sadly, it wasn't without casualties. 21 civilian hostages and 4 military personnel killed by the BLA before they could secure the train.
In the end, they did manage to free over 300 hostages, and they killed 33 militants. But this attack shows just how volatile the region is, and the huge challenges that Pakistan faces in trying to deal with these groups.
And the BLA, their demands are the release of blocked political prisoners.
They're accusing the Pakistani government of exploiting the region's resources, neglecting the people who live there.
The BLA's targeted infrastructure before, but this is the first time they've hijacked a train.
Yeah.
So yeah, it raises some real concerns about their methods and the potential for more attacks like this.
For sure. Now, to the Philippines, some major developments there. Former President Rodrigo Duterte, he's facing charges at the International Criminal Court, the ICC.
This is huge. He was actually arrested in Manila and then extradited to The Hague to face charges of crimes against humanity.
And these charges stem directly from his, let's be honest, brutal war on drugs campaign. Thousands of people were killed.
Duterte's arrest, it sent shockwaves through the Philippines and the international community as well. And what's interesting is his successor, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., he's actually the one who handed him over to the ICC.
A huge turn in their political alliance, an alliance that was really key to Marcos Jr.'s victory in the 2022 election. But their relationship, it's gone sour. And Marcos Jr. cooperating with the ICC investigation, well, it just underscores that growing rift between them.
A very dramatic political story playing out on the world stage. It raises some serious questions about holding leaders accountable for human rights abuses.
It really is a landmark moment, a turning point, perhaps. Now, let's talk about a story straight out of the world of organized crime. The former mob boss, Jean-Pierre Maldera, he was shot dead on a motorway near Grenoble in France.
A pretty brazen hit. Gunmen in a stolen car, they chased him down. They used military-grade weapons, too. Maldera, he was a major player in the Italo-Grenoblois Mafia, which was really powerful in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and he had previous convictions for organized crime, but recently he'd been keeping a low profile. So this killing, it begs the question, was he still involved in criminal activity?
It definitely reminds us that organized crime, it's always lurking. And this hit, well, it could spark more violence as the power dynamics in these criminal networks shift.
Definitely a story to watch as the investigation develops. Okay, on to something that highlights, well, the tension between development and the environment. Brazil is building this new highway right through the Amazon rainforest.
All part of the preparations for the COP30 climate summit being held in Biome. The idea is The highway will help with traffic to the city.
But environmentalists, they're outraged, understandably. The deforestation it's causing is huge. Tens of thousands of acres of rainforest have been cleared for this highway, and it cuts right through a protected area.
It really highlights the challenge of balancing economic development with protecting the environment, especially with a huge event like COP30. And local residents, they're worried too.
Absolutely. Claudio Vericat, he lives near the construction site. He told reporters he's lost his livelihood. He used to harvest acai berries, now he can't. And he's worried this highway will make it easier for others to come in and deforest even more of the area.
And scientists are sounding the alarm about the impact on the rainforest ecosystem.
Professor Silvia Sardina, she's a wildlife vet, and she warns that this highway, it's going to disrupt animal movements, and it's going to reduce their habitat. It's a tough situation.
It really shows how crucial it is to think long-term, to consider the environmental consequences before launching these big development projects. Now, the Brazilian government, they insist that this is a sustainable highway.
They point to features like wildlife crossings, bike lanes, solar lighting.
But the critics, they argue those measures, they don't come close to making up for the damage that's already been done by clearing the rainforest. And they're asking, is hosting COP30 really worth this environmental cost? This debate is probably going to heat up as we get closer to the summit.
Definitely a story to follow. Now to a region with its own set of complexities, the Middle East. The U.S. envoy, Steve Witkoff, he's trying to mediate indirect talks between Israel and Hamas.
He's in Qatar right now, meeting with both sides.
Yeah.
Trying to get them to extend the ceasefire in Gaza. It's a fragile ceasefire. It was actually negotiated by the Trump administration right before he took office.
Right, and a major part of that ceasefire was the prisoner exchange. Hamas released 25 living Israeli hostages and the remains of 8 others. And Israel, they released around 1,800 Palestinian prisoners, along with 5 Thai hostages. But the first part of the ceasefire, it expired on March 1st. And both sides, well, they have different ideas about extending it.
Israel wants to extend the truce for another 2 months, and they've proposed releasing about half of the remaining hostages as a starting point.
But Hamas, they want a complete end to the war and a full withdrawal by Israel from Gaza. They've said no to the idea of a temporary extension.
Yeah.
And they want immediate talks about the second stage of that original ceasefire agreement.
It's a delicate situation, both sides trying to use these negotiations to their advantage. And the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, well, it just adds to the urgency.
It really does.
Yeah.
The Israeli blockade on aid deliveries is creating really tough conditions for the people living there. Food and fuel cut off. Even the only desalination plant, the one that provides clean water, it's operating at a reduced capacity.
The UN and other organizations, they're very concerned about what this means for civilians.
And there's a real worry that things will just get worse if they don't reach a resolution soon.
And to add to the tension, we've got the Houthi movement in Yemen. They have threatened to target Israeli ships because of the blockade,
Raising the possibility of this conflict spreading even further. It's a reminder of how connected all these geopolitical issues really are. Witkoff, he's got his work cut out for him, trying to bridge the gap between Israel and Hamas. But these efforts, they offer at least a sliver of hope for a peaceful outcome.
The world is watching to see if he can pull it off. Now, some news that's definitely a setback for President Trump and his hopes for diplomacy with Iran. The supreme leader there has rejected any possibility of nuclear negotiations with the U.S.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he called it a deception. He pointed to President Trump's decision to pull out of the 2015 nuclear deal, saying it's proof the U.S. can't be trusted to stick to any new agreement.
It seems President Trump's personal letter, the one where he proposed talks about preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, well, it doesn't seem to have swayed him.
Not at all. Khamenei hasn't even read it, apparently. The letter was delivered by an official from the UAE. But Khamenei's stance is actions speak louder than words. And President Trump's past actions have created this atmosphere of distrust.
Khamenei has said again and again that Iran has no intention of developing nuclear weapons. But he also issued a very strong warning.
He said Iran will retaliate. And they'll retaliate forcefully if the U.S. or its allies attack its nuclear facilities. The stakes are high, and the potential for escalation is very real.
The situation's made even more complicated by the fact that Iran has been violating the 2015 deal. They're increasing their enriched uranium stockpile.
They're getting closer to having enough for a weapon. And both the U.S. and Israel have made it clear they won't allow Iran to obtain nuclear weapons. That raises the possibility of military action. But there are glimmers of hope. Even though Iran has rejected talks with the U.S., they have said they are open to discussing their nuclear program with other countries.
So there are some ongoing talks with the UK, France, and Germany. And there's a trilateral meeting planned between China, Russia, and Iran in Beijing to discuss this issue.
These efforts, they could offer a way forward, but the path ahead is still uncertain.
It's a very delicate diplomatic situation. Things could go either way. The whole world will be watching to see what happens next. Now let's shift our attention to Greenland. The political landscape there has changed after their general election.
The Democratic Party, the center-right party, they won a surprise victory. They're promising to be much more cautious about gaining independence from Denmark.
Independence was a major issue in the election, along with President Trump's, well, some might say, outlandish interest in acquiring Greenland.
Yeah, his interest hasn't gone unnoticed. Remember, he first talked about buying the island back in 2019, and he brought it up again just last week.
He seems to think Greenland is really strategically important to the U.S. for national security reasons.
But both Greenland and Denmark, they've firmly rejected his advances.
Yeah, they've made that very clear. And these newly elected Democrats, they're taking a very gradual approach to independence. They want to focus on making self-government successful before any drastic steps are taken.
It's a very different stance than the Nalarak Party, who came in second place. They want a much faster move to independence and closer ties with the U.S.
It's interesting, President Trump's efforts to just buy Greenland outright, they've actually given the independence movement more energy.
It's true. His actions, they've put the issue front and center in Greenlandic politics, whether he intended to or not.
These election results, they show just how complicated the relationship is between Greenland, Denmark, and the U.S. And it seems like the push for independence, it's only going to get stronger in the years to come.
It's a story to watch for sure. The Arctic, it's becoming more and more strategically important, and Greenland's future will play a big part in that. Okay, let's switch gears again to a story about geopolitics, resources, and armed conflict. There are reports that the U.S. and the DRC, that's the Democratic Republic of Congo, they're considering a deal. It would be an exchange of strategic minerals for military cooperation.
The DRC, they've had a wealth of natural resources, but they've also been plagued by instability. Right now, they're facing a serious threat from these advancing M23 rebels.
And they're looking to the U.S. for support to turn the tide.
So under this potential deal, the U.S. would get access to the DRC's vast mineral wealth. We're talking about cobalt, which is essential for electric vehicle batteries, a very strategic resource.
And in return, the U.S. would provide military assistance to the DRC. We're talking training, equipment, potentially even access to U.S. military bases.
There's even been discussion about replacing the UN peacekeeping operations there with direct security cooperation between the U.S. and the DRC.
It's a big idea, one that could have major consequences for both countries. But there are risks, of course.
Yeah, definitely some challenges ahead.
Some experts, they're voicing concerns about how feasible and effective this deal would actually be, given the situation in the DRC. It's a very difficult environment.
And there are some significant risks for U.S. companies operating there.
Absolutely. Transparency in these negotiations is going to be crucial. We need to make sure that any deal actually benefits the Congolese people.
We've seen these kinds of deals go bad before. The China-DRC deal, for example, it was criticized for not delivering on its promises.
It's a cautionary tale. This possible deal between the U.S. and the DRC, it really highlights how important Africa is becoming in the global competition for resources.
It shows the complex relationship between economic interests, security concerns, and the fight for stability in these volatile regions, a story that's sure to develop.
Now for a story of, well, resilience in the face of terrorism. Somali forces, they managed to end this 24-hour hotel siege by al-Shabaab militants in the city of Beledweyne.
Must have been terrifying.
Absolutely. It started with a car bomb and involved intense fighting between the militants and the security forces.
Were there any casualties?
Unfortunately, yes. Several military officers, traditional elders, and soldiers lost their lives.
That's awful.
It is. But the Somali forces, they showed incredible courage, and they were able to neutralize the attackers, some of whom detonated themselves.
What was the target of this attack?
The Kahira Hotel. It was actually being used as a meeting place for politicians and security officials. They were discussing a planned offensive against al-Shabaab.
So, a strategic target.
Exactly. This attack shows that al-Shabaab is still a very real threat. Despite all the efforts to combat them, the fight against terrorism, it's far from over.
The Somali forces, they deserve a lot of credit for their bravery and their resilience in this situation.
They do. And the international community needs to keep supporting Somalia as they work to create a more secure future.
Addressing the root causes of this extremism is also essential. We need to stop people from becoming radicalized in the first place. All right, now for a story about the ongoing trade tensions between the U.S. and the EU. President Trump's 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from the EU, they've now come into effect.
And as expected, the EU has retaliated. They've hit back with their own tariffs, targeting $26 billion worth of U.S. exports.
It's a classic tit-for-tat trade war, both sides just escalating the situation.
In this trade war, it's likely going to mean higher prices for consumers, both in the U.S. and the EU.
Businesses are going to feel it too, especially European steel producers.
It creates an uneven playing field, and it hurts their ability to compete.
It's all part of President Trump's America First strategy.
But a lot of experts are warning that this protectionist approach, it could backfire.
They believe free trade is essential for a healthy global economy. So where do you think this trade war is headed?
It's hard to say for sure, but I don't think it's going to end well for anyone.
Hopefully the U.S. and the EU, they can find a way to de-escalate the situation. Get back to a more cooperative trading relationship. Trade wars, they rarely have any winners.
Let's hope so. Now, for a story that offers some hope amidst all this conflict, the U.S. and Ukraine, they've jointly proposed a 30-day ceasefire with Russia.
This is pretty significant. This is the most detailed ceasefire proposal we've seen since this war began.
It calls for an immediate stop to the fighting, and for the U.S. to resume sharing intelligence and providing security assistance to Ukraine.
It also calls for the creation of negotiating teams to try and work towards a lasting peace agreement.
It's a crucial step towards ending the violence and hopefully finding a peaceful solution.
Of course, there are still challenges ahead, obstacles to overcome.
There are. Russia, they have the military advantage right now, and there's a real worry that Ukraine might be pressured into accepting a deal that's not in their best interest.
There's also concern that Russia might exploit this ceasefire, use it to regroup, strengthen their forces, use it to their advantage in the long run.
And there's the question of the U.S. security guarantees for Ukraine. How effective would they be? And what role could European peacekeepers play? It's complex, no easy answers. But this proposal, it represents a real chance for dialogue, for diplomacy.
The international community needs to seize this opportunity, push for a peaceful resolution, prevent even more suffering.
Absolutely. Let's hope this ceasefire holds and that it leads to lasting peace in the region. Okay, now let's talk about accountability, but in high finance this time. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, they've charged this hedge fund manager with insider trading.
Yeah, insider trading. It really undermines the integrity of the markets. It's basically using secret information to get an unfair advantage and make illegal profits.
Exactly, and that's what the SEC is alleging here, that this hedge fund manager used non-public information to make profitable trades.
This case is a reminder of how important it is to have fair and transparent markets. The SEC, they play a crucial role in protecting investors, making sure the market operates with integrity.
Absolutely. Insider trading erodes trust, makes investors nervous. And the SEC taking action like this, well, it sends a strong message. This kind of illegal activity won't be tolerated. Okay, let's switch gears completely. Let's talk about art. A new museum dedicated to contemporary African art, it just opened in London.
That's cool. What kind of art are we talking about here?
A really impressive collection, actually. Paintings, sculptures, installations, multimedia works, all by African artists.
It sounds pretty amazing. What's the museum hoping to achieve?
The goal is to showcase the incredible artistic heritage of Africa and to help people understand contemporary African culture better.
It's great to see African art getting more recognition on the global stage. It's a valuable addition to the London art scene.
For sure. A must-see for anyone who loves art.
Yeah.
And wants to experience something different. Okay, shifting gears again. The global refugee crisis, it's an urgent issue. And the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, they've issued a pretty stark warning about the growing number of displaced people around the world.
This is a crisis that demands our attention, our action. We've got conflicts, persecution, climate change. All these factors are forcing millions of people to flee their homes.
And the UNHCR, they're facing a huge challenge trying to support all these refugees. Their resources are stretched thin. They're calling on countries around the world to step up, do more, share the responsibility.
What can countries do to help?
Well, offering asylum, providing humanitarian aid. Those are essential steps. We can't just turn a blind eye to the suffering of people fleeing violence and persecution.
It's a test of our humanity, really.
Yeah.
We need to show compassion, support for those in need. Now, for a story that takes us into the world of space, astronomers have discovered this new exoplanet, and they think it might be capable of supporting life.
This is big news. Exoplanets, just to remind everyone, are planets that orbit stars outside our own solar system. And this particular one, it's located in what we call the habitable zone.
The habitable zone. So what exactly does that mean?
The habitable zone is the region around a star where the temperatures are just right for liquid water to exist. And we think liquid water is essential for life as we know it.
So there's a chance this exoplanet could have life on it.
It's a possibility, and it's creating a lot of excitement. This discovery, it really fuels our curiosity about whether or not we're alone in the universe.
It's a good reminder of how vast and mysterious the universe is. What's next?
Well, more observations, more studies. Scientists will try to confirm whether life actually exists on this distant world. It'll take time, but it's a thrilling prospect. Okay, let's talk about a story that shows how effective conservation efforts can be. A group of conservationists has reintroduced this critically endangered species back into the wild.
That's fantastic. A victory for biodiversity. Proof that we can make a difference.
It really is. But this species was on the brink of extinction.
What happened? What made them endangered in the first place?
Habitat loss and poaching. Those were the main culprits.
So how did they bring it back?
It took a lot of effort. They protected and restored the species' habitat, and they cracked down hard on poaching.
Dedication and hard work, it paid off. This successful reintroduction, it gives us hope. Hope that we can protect other endangered species and preserve the amazing diversity of life on Earth. Now let's talk about neuroscience. Researchers have made a groundbreaking discovery about how memory works.
Memory. It's so fundamental to who we are. It lets us learn, adapt, understand the world around us.
Exactly. And this new research, it's giving us a better understanding of how those memories are formed and stored in the brain.
And the implications of this, they're huge. It's a big step forward in our understanding of how our brains work. And it could lead to new treatments for memory disorders, like Alzheimer's disease.
That's a huge possibility.
Right.
The potential benefits for people struggling with memory problems, this is definitely an area of research to keep an eye on.
Agreed. Okay, let's move on to a growing global health concern. The World Health Organization, the WHO, they've issued a warning about antibiotic resistance.
Antibiotics. They're essential for treating bacterial infections. What's causing this resistance?
Overuse, misuse, that's what's led to these drug-resistant bacteria.
So the bacteria are becoming immune to the drugs that are supposed to kill them.
Precisely. And that makes treating these infections much harder. It's a serious, serious threat.
What can we do about it?
Well, the WHO is calling for action. Governments, healthcare providers, everyone needs to step up. We need to promote responsible use of antibiotics, develop new ones, and invest in better infection control measures.
A multifaceted approach.
Exactly. We can't afford to ignore this. A world without effective antibiotics, it would be a disaster.
Okay, let's talk about something inspiring. An athlete with a disability just broke a world record.
Amazing, isn't it? This athlete has overcome so much, but they never gave up on their dream. Their dedication is truly inspiring.
It's a powerful example of what's possible when you set your mind to something and you refuse to give up.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, let's turn our attention to international relations. The US and China, they're in the middle of these really high-stakes negotiations.
This relationship between these two superpowers, it's vital for global stability. What are they negotiating about?
Trade, security. These are the big issues. There's a lot of tension, a lot of competition between the US and China. They're both vying for global influence, economic dominance.
So yeah, the stakes are high.
It's very high. The outcome of these negotiations, it'll have a huge impact on the world. Diplomacy is key here. Compromise, a commitment to peaceful coexistence.
Let's hope they can find some common ground, prevent things from getting worse. Now, for a story about freedom, human rights. Protests have erupted in a country where freedom of speech is being threatened.
Freedom of speech, it's a fundamental right. It's crucial for a democracy to function.
And yet so many people around the world are denied this basic right. And those who do speak out, they often face really harsh consequences.
These protesters are incredibly brave. They're putting their lives on the line to demand that their voices be heard.
They're standing up to oppression, fighting for a more just and equitable society. Hopefully their courage will inspire others to stand up for their rights, and that these protests will lead to real change.
Okay, now for a story about the power of education. There's this new initiative. It's working to bring educational opportunities to children in this remote, really impoverished region.
Education. It's so important. It opens up so many possibilities. It empowers people, lets them create a better future for themselves.
Exactly. And this initiative, it's making a real difference for these kids who would otherwise have very little access to education.
Investing in their future and the future of their community as a whole.
Absolutely. Education is key to breaking the cycle of poverty, creating a more just and equitable world. Okay, let's talk about music. This renowned musician just released a new album, and it's generating a lot of buzz globally.
Music has this amazing power, doesn't it? To transcend borders, connect people from all different walks of life.
It really does. And this album, it's a testament to the artist's creativity, their ability to evoke emotions through sound. Originality, they say. It resonates with listeners on a very deep level.
It's a reminder of the universal language of music. It brings us joy, comfort, inspiration. Now for a story about scientific research and the fight against cancer.
Cancer, a devastating disease that affects so many. Any breakthrough in cancer research, it offers hope.
Absolutely. And scientists have just made a big discovery, one that could lead to more effective treatments. And maybe even one day, a cure for cancer.
That's the hope. They've identified a new target for cancer therapies. This could mean new drugs that kill cancer cells, but don't harm healthy cells.
A very promising development. Let's hope it leads to a brighter future for cancer patients everywhere. Okay, let's dive into the ocean. A marine biologist just captured some amazing footage of this rare, incredibly elusive sea creature.
The ocean is full of mysteries.
What makes this creature so special?
Well, it's a species that's never been filmed before.
Right.
Never. This footage is giving us valuable insight into its behavior, its habitat.
It's a reminder of how much we still don't know about the ocean and how crucial it is to protect these marine ecosystems. Now, let's step back in time. Archaeologists have unearthed this ancient city that was lost for centuries.
It's like a window into the past. The city's ruins, they're giving us a glimpse into a long-gone era. We're learning about the culture, the beliefs, the daily life of the people who lived there.
It's amazing what they can learn from these discoveries.
It really is. And it highlights how important it is to preserve our cultural heritage. Learn from the past. Now, let's talk about innovation. Entrepreneurship. There's this young entrepreneur who's developed a game-changing new technology.
It's always inspiring to hear stories like this. What's the story behind this invention?
Well, this entrepreneur, they had a vision, and they had the determination to make it a reality. This invention, it's solving real problems, making a positive impact.
What a great example of what's possible when you combine creativity, hard work, and a desire to make a difference.
Agreed. Now let's talk about the ongoing struggle for social justice.
Equality, justice. These are values we should all strive for.
Unfortunately, discrimination is still a harsh reality for many people in many parts of the world.
So what's this story about?
It's about a group of activists. They're working tirelessly to promote equality, fight discrimination.
They're on the front lines of this fight.
They are. They're challenging injustice, advocating for a more inclusive and equitable society. They're making progress. But the fight, it's far from over.
We all have a role to play in creating a world where everyone is treated with dignity, with respect. We need to support these people, the people who are working to make that vision a reality.
Okay, let's turn to the world of sports. There's a story here about teamwork and perseverance.
Sports can teach us a lot about life, can't they?
They can. And this story is about a team of athletes. They overcame so much to achieve victory.
What kind of obstacles did they face?
Challenges on the field, off the field. But they never gave up. Their teamwork, perseverance, dedication, truly inspiring.
It's a great reminder that anything is possible when we work together and never give up. Now, for a story that reminds us of the beauty of the natural world.
Nature has this way of just captivating us, doesn't it?
It does. So what's this story about?
A photographer captured these amazing images of a rare natural phenomenon.
What kind of phenomena?
Something unique. It only happens under very specific conditions. This photographer, they were in the right place at the right time to witness it, to capture it.
A good reminder to appreciate the beauty of the natural world and to protect these wonders for future generations. Now let's talk about healthcare. A team of medical researchers has developed a new treatment for a disease that was previously incurable.
This is huge. This disease has caused so much suffering for so long.
And now there's hope. for patients who had given up.
It's a testament to human ingenuity, to the power of science. What did they discover? Well, they found a new way to target this disease. This could lead to new drugs that can actually cure it.
That's incredible, a real breakthrough. Let's hope this leads to a brighter future for those suffering from this disease. Okay, now for a story that just screams adventure.
The urge to explore, the unknown, it's part of what makes us human.
Absolutely. So what's this story about?
It's about a group of explorers. They went on this incredibly daring expedition to a remote and uncharted region.
Where'd you go?
Somewhere few humans have ever been. They faced a lot of dangers, a lot of challenges, but they were driven by their thirst for knowledge, their desire to understand the world better.
Their courage, their determination, it's inspiring. Now for a story about community and giving back.
It's always good to hear about people making a difference.
It is, so tell me about this story.
This is about a group of volunteers. They're working so hard to help those in need.
What are they doing?
Everything. They're helping the homeless, feeding the hungry, supporting people who are struggling.
Their selflessness, their compassion, it's heartwarming.
They're what it means to be a good neighbor. Okay, how about a story about preserving our cultural heritage?
History, culture, they're so important to who we are.
Absolutely. And this story, it's about a team of historians and archaeologists. They're working to restore this historic landmark.
What kind of landmark?
A place with a lot of historical and cultural significance. It's a symbol of our shared history, a reminder of the achievements of those who came before us.
It's crucial to protect these places. For future generations, they tell us where we come from, they help us understand who we are.
Now, for a story from the world of international diplomacy, two countries that have been in conflict for years and years, they've finally reached a peace agreement.
That's amazing. Peace is always something to celebrate.
It is. This agreement, it's a major step towards stability and prosperity in the region. It shows what diplomacy can achieve, the power of dialogue to resolve even the most entrenched conflicts.
Let's hope it lasts, and that it inspires others who are struggling with conflict. Okay, now for a company that's doing its part for the environment, a company that's making strides in environmental sustainability.
Protecting our planet, it's vital for our health, for future generations.
So what's this company doing?
They've developed this new technology, and it drastically reduces carbon emissions.
Wow, that's huge. Carbon emissions are a major driver of climate change.
This tech has the potential to make a real difference in the fight against climate change. Businesses can be part of the solution.
It's encouraging to see companies taking responsibility. We need more of this kind of innovation.
Now for a story about overcoming adversity, achieving your dreams.
Those stories, they're always inspiring. What's this one about?
This one is about an individual. They faced incredible challenges, but they never let those challenges define them. They kept going. They worked hard and achieved their goals.
It's a reminder that we can achieve anything if we believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
And never give up on our dreams.
Exactly. Okay, let's explore a story about the frontiers of science.
Science is amazing, constantly expanding our understanding of the world, the universe. So what's this story about?
A team of scientists have made this huge discovery, something that could completely change how we understand the universe.
What did they find?
Evidence that challenges our current theories about how the universe works. It opens up whole new avenues for research, for exploration.
There's still so much we don't know about the universe. It's exciting.
Now for a story about giving back, about philanthropy.
It's good to hear about people using their wealth to make a positive impact.
This is a story about a philanthropist. They've made a very generous donation to a very worthy cause.
What cause?
An organization that's working to address a really pressing social issue. Their donation will make a huge difference for a lot of people.
We can all make a difference. No matter what our means are, we can all contribute to making the world better.
Absolutely. Now let's celebrate cultural diversity and understanding.
The world is full of different cultures, different traditions, different perspectives. It's what makes it so rich.
And there's this festival happening. It celebrates cultural diversity, brings people together from all walks of life.
What's the goal of the festival?
Learning about different cultures, appreciating our differences, celebrating what we have in common.
Events like this are so important. They promote understanding, harmony. They break down barriers. They build bridges between people.
They foster a sense of community, of shared humanity.
We should embrace diversity, celebrate the richness it brings to our lives.
Okay, lastly, before we wrap up, let's talk about ethics. Ethics in AI, artificial intelligence.
AI is advancing rapidly. It's essential that we consider the ethical implications of all this.
And that's exactly what a group of experts have done. They've released a set of guidelines for the ethical development and use of AI.
What are some of the key principles in these guidelines?
Transparency, accountability, fairness, making sure that AI systems are developed and used responsibly.
Those are crucial. We need to make sure AI is used for good, that it doesn't harm individuals or society.
Right. And these guidelines, they also stress the need to protect privacy, to make sure AI systems don't discriminate against certain groups of people.
It's a very complicated issue. But these guidelines, they're definitely a step in the right direction.
We need to have this conversation, an open and honest conversation, about the ethics of AI. Because this technology, it's only going to become more powerful, more pervasive. All right, well, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another kind of conflict. President Trump's America First policy. It seems to be putting him at odds with, well, just about everyone.
Yeah, it seems like every day there's a new trade war or some kind of diplomatic spat brewing.
His stance on trade, it's definitely causing some friction, especially with Europe and China.
Right, so let's start with the European Union. What's the situation there?
Well, the EU's not happy about Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. They see it as protectionism, plain and simple, and they think it's going to hurt European businesses.
So how are they responding?
They've hit back with their own tariffs on U.S. goods, and they're targeting some pretty iconic American products. Bourbon, Harley-Davidson, motorcycles, things like that. It's classic tit-for-tat trade war, and it's escalating pretty quickly.
What are the experts saying about the potential fallout from all of this?
Well, economists are warning that this trade war could really damage both the U.S. and EU economies. Consumers are probably going to see higher prices for a lot of goods. And businesses on both sides of the Atlantic could suffer. There's a real fear that this could spiral into a full-blown trade war. And that would be bad news for the global economy.
Let's move on to China. The U.S.-China relationship has been tense for a while now. What's the latest there?
Well, the biggest issue is trade. Specifically, the massive trade deficit that the U.S. has with China. Trump has slapped tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, and China has retaliated with their own tariffs.
A trade war that's having ripple effects all over the world. But it's not just trade, is it? The U.S. and China are clashing over security issues as well.
Right. There's concern about China's growing military power, their activities in the South China Sea, their stance on Taiwan, and then there's North Korea, which just adds another layer of complexity to the whole thing.
It seems like Trump's America First policy has just made an already difficult relationship with China even more challenging.
It has. It's created a lot of tension and a lot of uncertainty on the world stage. Now, shifting gears again to a different kind of worry. There's growing concern about a potential recession here in the U.S.
What's fueling those fears?
Economists are pointing to a few things. You've got Trump's trade policies, rising interest rates, government spending cuts, and a global economy that's slowing down. And then there's the stock market. A lot of people are worried about a potential correction, especially in the tech sector, which has been booming.
What are the signs that a recession might be on the horizon?
We're already seeing some indicators. Retail sales are down, consumer confidence is dropping, business investment is slowing, and the stock market's been pretty volatile lately.
If there is a recession, what kind of impact could it have?
Well, a recession would likely lead to job losses, slower economic growth, and a decrease in consumer spending. It would be a serious economic downturn that would affect everyone. Now, economists are divided on whether a recession is actually imminent, but there are definitely some warning signs that we need to pay attention to.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. Now, for a story that shows the human cost of the conflict in Ukraine. The U.S. and Ukraine, they're pushing for a 30-day ceasefire with Russia.
This is the most concrete effort to de-escalate the situation that we've seen so far. The proposal calls for an immediate halt to the fighting. It also calls for the U.S. to resume sharing intelligence and providing military aid to Ukraine. And it proposes setting up negotiating teams to try and hammer out a lasting peace agreement.
A ceasefire would provide some much-needed relief from the violence. But what are the chances that Russia will actually agree to it?
Well, there are a few hurdles. First, Russia has the upper hand militarily right now, so they might not see a ceasefire as being in their best interest. There's also the concern that they could use the ceasefire to regroup, to strengthen their forces, basically use it to their advantage in the long run.
And what about the U.S.? What about their role in guaranteeing Ukraine's security?
Yeah, that's another big question. How effective would those guarantees be? And what about the potential role of European peacekeepers? There are no easy answers here. It's complicated. But this ceasefire proposal, it at least represents a step towards stopping the fighting and starting a dialogue.
Let's hope it leads to some real progress toward peace. Well, that's it for our news roundup today. We've covered a lot of ground, from international conflicts and political scandals to some hopeful developments in science, tech, and culture.
We've seen humanity at its best and its worst today. From the incredible resilience of people facing adversity to the very real threats of things like cybercrime and climate change.
It's a lot to take in, but it's important to stay informed about what's happening both here at home and around the world.
Absolutely. We'll be back tomorrow with more news and analysis. Thanks for joining us.